Do you remember the Tommy Kaira ZZ? It was a small, two-seater mid-engine sports car that I first learned about through Gran Turismo. What year did it go out of production? Think about your best answer and hold on to it to see how close you got. To me, the story of Tommy Kaira is fascinating. A company I first learned about through a video game that I had assumed was far bigger than it really was, with one of the greatest stories in the automotive world. So let's dive in. So, Tommy Kaira, a Japanese auto parts company, built a business out of taking existing road cars from predominantly Japanese manufacturers, most notably Nissan, and modifying them to not only be faster, but better in pretty much every way. They'd upgrade the interiors, they'd upgrade the suspension, and they'd of course give it a bunch more power if that's what you're after. But having built a strong reputation for knowing their way around a sports car, they took a leap of faith and decided to design and build their own original sports car. Their first effort was called the ZZ, which started life in 1996 and was a very Lotus-esque car. A small two-seater roadster with a mid-mounted 2-litre Nissan engine pushing just under 190 horsepower to the rear wheels. The connection to Lotus went deeper than that though, as despite Tommy Kaira being a Japanese firm, the ZZ would be built in Norfolk. Not by Lotus though, or using their infrastructure at an entirely separate facility that just so happened to be close by. I imagine they must have at least poached some staff, though I can't confirm that suspicion. So the ZZ must have been built for the UK and Europe then. Why else would they choose to build them in England? Well, no. Around 90% of all the ZZs built at the Norfolk facility were sold back into Japan. The economics of this must have been horrendous. If anyone out there knows what the motivation might have been for this round-the-houses supply chain, do let me know. I had assumed it was because they were sourcing the chassis or some other parts or expertise from Lotus, but as previously discussed, I got the distinct impression that that wasn't the case. Were they expecting more sales in the UK and Europe that simply didn't materialise? Maybe. Your guess is as good as mine. In the late 90s, there was a change to some aspect of Japan's crash safety rules, which prevented the ZZ from being legal to sell as a new car in the country. With over 200 of the around 220 ZZs they had built so far being sold into Japan, this was a devastating blow to Tommy Kaira, who couldn't find a solid way round the new rules and subsequently shut down production. If you answered 1999 to the question at the beginning, give yourself half a point. Why only half? Well, Tommy Kaira sold their Norfolk facility to a company named Breckland Technologies, who continued to build the ZZ under license, selling them under the name Leading Edge and expanding the lineup to include the original 190 horsepower spec, named the 190, and a tuned-up 240 horsepower spec, named the 240. Apparently, the car was kept in production until 2005, and while I've got no idea how many were built during this time, I'd hazard a guess it wasn't very many. If you answered the question at the beginning of the video with the year 2005, give yourself half a point. Why only half? We'll get to that. Breckland Technologies went out of business just a couple of years later. A fate Automobilistic avoids with the help of channel members. Support the channel by clicking the join button below and you'll get access to exclusive perks like unique content and members only Discord access. Thank you to all you wonderful people who've already chosen to become a member, it makes a world of difference. But back to Tommy Kaira. Losing their facility in Norfolk, where the company's only original car had been built, was a major blow to the company, and by the turn of the millennium, they were in dire straits. In order to try and stay afloat, they put together a concept car named the ZZ2, a full-on supercar judging by the spec sheet. Like the ZZ, the ZZ2 would be built around a lot of Nissan bits, but from what I can tell it had an original chassis, and clearly had totally original bodywork, and was powered by a Nissan RB26 from the Skyline GTR, which in this guise was capable of pushing well over 500 horsepower. The car would also be fitted with Nissan's Atezza ETS adaptive all-wheel drive system that had proven revolutionary for the R32 Skyline, and they claimed they would be able to make this package weigh just 1,000 kilograms, though I find that slightly unlikely. They unveiled the new car at the 2001 Tokyo Auto Show, where it seems to have captured people's imaginations. Unfortunately, after the launch, Tommy Kaira promptly went bankrupt. The combination of the loss of their ZZ facility, in tandem with the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis, it's little wonder they ran out of money. But worry not, the story is not over yet. The ZZ2 concept had piqued the interest of auto parts manufacturer Autoback 7, who swooped in. I'm not sure if they bought the whole Tommy Kaira company, or if they just bought the naming rights and intellectual property of the company during their own bankruptcy proceedings, or if there was some other vector of acquisition, but the upshot was that Tommy Kaira was now under the Autoback 7 umbrella. Specifically, Tommy Kaira was folded into Autoback 7's new in-house sports car department, ASL, a name you probably recognise if you knew of Tommy Kaira before this video. Despite the suggestion at the time of the acquisition being that ASL was targeting the ZZ2, the company all but totally threw out that concept once the dust had settled, instead reviving the old ZZ platform and building it a more modern body. They called the new car the Kaira. Much like the ZZ2, however, none of these were actually built after the concept car's debut, except a modified racing version built for the GT300 class. I'm not sure how close the mechanical relationship was between the ASL Kaira GT300 car and the Tommy Kaira ZZ. Information is sparse, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they did share drivetrain and chassis elements. In partnership with Aguri Suzuki's Team Aguri outfit, and with parent company Autoback 7 as the title sponsor, the ASL Kaira GT300 competed in a huge number of races in Japan's Super GT Championship, competing from 2003 until 2012. It was pretty good too, regularly fighting for wins and finding itself in championship contention in a few of those years. The car raced 74 times in total, claiming 7 class wins and managing an incredibly small number of mechanical retirements in that time, breaking down only 4 times, at least badly enough that it was unable to finish the race. Its racing career only ended after the rulemakers decided that competing cars should actually exist away from the track, and given no Kaira road cars had ever been built, ASL and Aguri were forced to abandon the car after the 2012 Super GT season. But let's rewind a bit to 2009. The global economy has just shit the bed, and Autoback 7 were, like most companies, looking to find some cash. They had never used the Tommy Kaira name since purchasing it at the beginning of the millennium, using their own ASL brand instead, and so they sold the Tommy Kaira name to a company called Rowan. This all gets a bit messy, and there are lawsuits between Rowan and the original owners of Tommy Kaira over naming rights and all sorts of muddled crap, but a few years later Rowan partnered with Japanese EV startup GLM to build a car to compete with the Tesla Roadster. It would be called the ZZ EV. Yep, it's back. By this point the relation to the original ZZ was questionable, but apparently the ZZ EV would be based on the same aluminium box frame chassis as the original car. Yes, the 2-litre Roadster from 1996. They did actually build the car, with production beginning in 2015, when there was a little bit of media around it, mostly because of the name I imagine. In true 2015 EV fashion, it reportedly had around 300 horsepower and a range of around 75 miles. The car was ostensibly in production until 2021, though in this instance, what the phrase "in production" translated to in reality is hard to know. I've got no idea how many they sold, but I'd have to guess it was probably more than 0 if they kept it available for 6 years. This finally brings us to the answer to the question I asked right at the beginning. If you said that the Tommy Kaira ZZ went out of production in 2021, congratulations, you get 1 whole point. Pat yourself on the back, well done. In 2022, ASL promised to build the ZZ2 concept, reviving it as the ASL RS01, which it had been renamed to after their takeover of Tommy Kaira. But, surprise surprise, nothing has been heard about it since. I first told this story on Intergalactic Binman's podcast, check out his channel below. A big thank you to channel members for supporting Automobilistic. Consider joining below to get exclusive perks, and if not, a subscribe is appreciated too. If you enjoyed this, check out this video about the Gilet Vertigo, and until next time, goodbye.